He proposed to her a week after dumping me. Clara stood on a marble staircase, flashing the oversized diamond ring as guests clapped like trained seals. I was still in the same dress I'd worn to our last date. Kyle didn't even have the decency to tell me in private. He broke up with me at a dinner table with 2 glasses of wine and a plate of untouched steak. "You're not what I need anymore, Lena," he said, leaning back with a smug expression. "Clara comes from a different world. A world I want to be part of." I didn't cry. Not then. Not when he handed me the check or when Clara waltzed over and smirked like she'd won a prize. "Hope you don't take it personally," she said, voice dripping with sugar. "Kyle just needs someone who fits the future he's building." I stood, paid the bill, and walked out. What they didn't know was that I owned the restaurant. And the land under it. And the tech infrastructure that Clara's daddy's company leased their servers from. I was Lena Ward. But I hadn't used that name since my mother died. I'd been told to live quietly, to grow up without the suffocating eyes of society. The Ward fortune was locked in trusts and hidden under layers of firms and foundations. But it had matured. And so had I. Kyle used to laugh at old money. "They're dinosaurs," he said once. "We're the future." I believed him. I let myself believe I was building a life with a man who saw me, not just my simplicity. Now I knew better. He didn't see me. He saw limits. And Clara, she made sure to tell everyone I was the charity case girlfriend. "She's sweet," Clara had once said, loud enough for others to hear. "But don't you think she's out of place at these events?" That night, I left early and went home to the penthouse my family quietly kept under a shell corporation. No photos. No interviews. No LinkedIn. I was a ghost to the world. But not anymore. 3 days after their engagement party, my lawyer delivered papers. I had acquired a controlling interest in a chain of luxury bridal salons. The same chain Clara was counting on for her dress. I didn't cancel her order. I just made sure her name was replaced on the client list with a bold red note, flagged for breach of contract. The press didn't pick up on it yet. I wasn't ready for that. My revenge wasn't going to be loud. It would be slow. Surgical. Untraceable. Until the moment they looked up and realized they'd fallen into a trap I'd built with the same hands they mocked. But I wasn't just going to destroy them. I was going to show them what power really looked like. Not the rented suits and credit-leveraged startups Kyle clung to. Not the socialite glamour Clara wore like armor. Real power didn't scream. It signed checks that determined whether someone got invited or erased. A week later, I attended a charity auction in the city. The event was held at the Harrington Hotel, one of the most exclusive venues in the country. I arrived in silence, dressed in a sleek black gown, hair pinned, face unreadable. No one recognized me. Even Kyle, standing across the room with Clara on his arm, barely glanced my way. Why would he? He thought I was licking my wounds somewhere in the suburbs. He thought I'd disappear. I raised my paddle on a lot no one else bid on. A package deal. A historic townhouse, a stake in an old publishing firm, and a dinner with one of the top tech investors in the region. The room turned. Whispers rose. I signed the check without blinking. Later that night, as I waited for my car, a man approached. Sharp suit. Smarter eyes. He didn't smile right away. Just stood beside me and looked out at the skyline. "That was a bold move," he said. I didn't turn. Sometimes it takes a quiet one to make noise. "You just bought out 3 companies in one breath," he said. "That's not quiet." I glanced at him. Depends on who's listening. He offered his hand. "Adrian." I shook it. "Lena." He didn't ask more. Didn't probe. But something told me he knew. Knew I wasn't just another girl in a designer dress. That maybe, just maybe, I was someone who'd been underestimated one too many times. And now I was rewriting the rules. Not with bitterness. Not with noise. But with control. I was done being their footnote. This time, I'd be the headline. The first domino fell on a Wednesday. Clara's father's company received notice that a major investor was pulling out of a long-term development deal, one that was supposed to secure funding for her and Kyle's lavish wedding. No explanation. Just a quiet retreat. The board panicked. The media hadn't caught wind yet, but the executives started whispering. Clara blamed market shifts. Kyle blamed bad timing. Neither of them had the slightest idea that the investor they lost was connected to one of my holding firms. I sat at my desk in a glass-walled corner office that no one knew belonged to me and watched the ripple take shape. I wasn't just targeting Kyle and Clara. I was unraveling the foundation they'd both clung to. Every brunch post and smug little laugh they shared had chipped away at me, and now, I was returning the favor. Adrian called that afternoon. I hear there's turbulence in the Dawson portfolio. Barely a breeze, I said. I also heard you were the one who called it. I paused, then smiled into the silence. People talk too much. Good, he said. Because I'd hate to think I was the only one enjoying this show. He wasn't. I was enjoying it too, strategically. Not out of pettiness, but justice. Kyle hadn't just left me. He had humiliated me. Spread half-truths. Whispered things that made people look twice. She's sweet, but clingy. She never really understood my world. I just outgrew her. He made me small so he could feel big. Clara weaponized it. She relished every look of pity I got. Every event I wasn't invited to. Every time someone said, "Oh, you used to date Kyle?" Wow, that must sting. Now it was their turn. At the next investor mixer, I didn't arrive alone. Adrian was at my side, cool and unreadable, a presence that drew attention without effort. His firm had just acquired a minority stake in a biotech startup, one Kyle's company had been chasing for months. I didn't even have to say anything. Kyle saw us walk in together, saw Adrian greet me like an equal, not a date. Clara's face twitched. Just slightly. I caught it. "Isn't that Lena?" she whispered to someone. "She looks different." Different was the point. I didn't want them to recognize the girl they used to laugh at. I wanted them to feel her walking past them, above them, without ever looking back. They tried to corner me later that night. "Lena," Kyle said, "boy's too casual." "Wow. Didn't expect to see you here." I tilted my head. "Why not?" "I thought you said I should move on." Clara gave a tight smile. "You've certainly done well for yourself." "Some of us don't have to marry rich to do that," I said. "Two beats. Or pretend we belong at the table." Kyle stiffened. Clara's eyes narrowed, but she kept smiling. Adrian stepped in beside me. "Everything all right here?" "Perfect," I said. They walked away a minute later. I saw the flicker in Kyle's eyes. That flash of doubt. He'd been so sure I'd crawl back or disappear. He wasn't used to seeing me like this. Polished. Untouchable. Later, as I sat in the car beside Adrian, he finally asked, "What's the endgame?" I turned my head slowly. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want restoration. And a little humility. For them." He laughed. "You're terrifying." In a very calm, beautiful way. I looked out the window. They broke something they didn't understand. I'm just letting them see what they lost. By the end of the week, Clara's father's firm was facing an inquiry. Someone had leaked documents suggesting misused funds and a falsified valuation. Not enough to break them. Just enough to get regulators interested. Clara canceled her bridal fittings. Kyle postponed a launch. I donated anonymously to a startup incubator in Clara's hometown and made sure the press covered it, tagging my public name. My new name. Lena Carr. The papers called me the silent billionaire. Whispers turned into questions. Questions into calls. The same people who had once laughed at me were now asking if I'd like to speak on panels. I declined. Let them wonder. Let them piece it together while the life they tried to bury me beneath crumbled from the inside. I wasn't finished yet. The problem with people like Kyle and Clara is that they don't notice who's holding the door until it slams shut in their face. 2 weeks after the investor event, Clara's family held a private fundraiser in the Hamptons. It was supposed to secure new backing for a series of lifestyle ventures she was launching, a wellness brand, a luxury candle line, and something involving skincare products she didn't understand. I made a few calls. Quietly, professionally. By the end of the day, 2 of the brands she was counting on for partnerships dropped out. One of them was owned by a firm I had a majority stake in. The other was acquired by Adrian. We didn't gloat. That wasn't the point. That weekend, Adrian invited me to a vineyard his firm had just acquired. I expected a tour. Instead, I got a table under the trees, a bottle of wine older than Kyle's startup, and silence, warm, calm, and undemanding. "You could bury them in a week," Adrian said as he poured my glass. "But you're not." "Why?" "Because they wouldn't understand," I said. "Not yet. They still think this is a setback. A rough patch. They need to watch the doors close one by one, until there's nowhere left to stand." Adrian raised his glass. "To patient storms." I smiled. "To clarity." That night, I got a message from an old friend, Elena, a classmate from college. She sent a screenshot of Clara's latest social post. It was a photo of Clara and Kyle at a luxury boutique. The caption said, "Retail therapy for the future Mrs. King. Some people fold. I rebuild." I stared at it for a full minute. Then I picked up my phone and made another move. Clara's preferred wedding planner had just signed a new office lease. I bought the building that lease was tied to. Not to evict anyone. Just to remind them who controlled the terms. Within 48 hours, Clara's reservation at their most prestigious venue was accidentally double-booked. The replacement option? A smaller, less glamorous hall with a lovely outdoor setup and no press access. She threw a fit. Kyle posted a vague quote about testing true strength in storms. I laughed so hard I dropped my phone. Meanwhile, Adrian and I were making real moves. We backed a medical AI startup together and co-chaired a philanthropic roundtable. He respected my distance. Never asked for more than I was willing to give. But when he looked at me, it wasn't with curiosity. It was with understanding. He didn't want a version of me. He wanted all of me, or nothing. One night, after a board dinner, he asked, "Do you think you'll ever tell them?" "I want to," I said. "But not yet. Not until the day they need help. Until they realize the doors don't open for them anymore. And then I'll be standing on the other side. Will you let them in? Would you?" He smiled, then turned his glass. Not a chance. A month before the wedding, Kyle's startup made headlines. Not for funding, not for success, but for internal conflict. A whistleblower revealed mismanagement and inflated user numbers. Clara tried to pivot the attention, but the scandal spilled into their pre-wedding press. Sponsors pulled out. They couldn't blame me. My name was still nowhere near theirs. Yet. At the next gala, I wore red. Not for symbolism. For power. I walked in with Adrian, hand in hand, unhurried and unbothered. Kyle saw us before Clara did. He froze. Then she turned, and for the first time, her smile broke before she could fake it. They came over, of course. People like them always do. "You look incredible," Kyle said. "Unrecognizable," Clara added, trying to keep her tone even. Adrian shook Kyle's hand briefly, then turned to me. "Want to step outside?" "In a moment," I said. I faced them fully. "Congratulations, by the way. I hope your wedding turns out memorable." Clara's jaw tightened. "We're still finalizing details." "I imagine you are," I said. "Venues can be tricky when the stars don't align." Kyle narrowed his eyes. "Lena, what are you playing at?" I tilted my head. "Me? I've just been living." Adrian took my hand again as we walked away. I didn't need to look back to feel the weight of their stares. That was the moment I knew the balance had shifted. They didn't see me as the broken ex anymore. They saw me as a threat. And the best part? I was just getting started. They say karma takes time. I didn't. 3 weeks before their wedding, Kyle and Clara's world began to tilt. The private equity firm Kyle had been courting for months suddenly withdrew their term sheet. The reason was internal recalibration. In reality, it was because Adrian and I had already backed a competitor and made them an offer too good to refuse. But again, my name never came up. They were unraveling from the inside. Clara's vendors stopped returning calls. One luxury designer lost her dress sample in shipment. Her PR agent dropped her for a more stable client. And a popular gossip blog posted an anonymous blind item about a certain bride-to-be who bought her ring before the proposal and faked her net worth. None of it pointed to me. But I made sure they felt it. At a charity fashion event hosted by a mutual acquaintance, Clara arrived in a panic, begging to be seated next to the main sponsor. That sponsor was me. Not that she knew it. I watched from the balcony as Clara was seated in the second row, sandwiched between a D-list influencer and a blogger she once mocked online. She looked around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to validate her presence. Kyle wasn't with her. He was outside, on the phone, pacing in frustration. His app was being removed from a major platform due to user data violations. A lawsuit was coming. I didn't need to touch it. Adrian handled it beautifully, his firm pulling out quietly, leaving Kyle exposed. I wasn't trying to destroy them in a single blow. This was erosion. Adrian and I dined on a rooftop later that night, laughter drifting over wine and candlelight. He reached for my hand halfway through the meal, not in a possessive way, but steady. "You've already won," he said. "Not yet," I replied. "They don't know who beat them." "Is that what you want?" I want them to look up and realize the woman they replaced was never below them. She was leagues ahead. And they just handed her the matchbook. He studied me quietly. You're brilliant, you know. I shrugged. They made me this way. 2 days later, I received an email from Kyle. Short. Unexpected. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" I didn't answer. Instead, I instructed my assistant to forward a press kit to select media contacts. One that revealed my new role as executive chair of Carward Capital, the rebranded empire left to me by my mother. A name no one had heard publicly in over a decade. The timing was deliberate. 1 week before their wedding, the headlines dropped, Carward returns. The billionaire heiress nobody saw coming, photos of me at events, names of companies I owned, lists of holdings that tied back to major players in tech, fashion, and finance. My face centered on every business page. Adrian congratulated me with a single word. Magnificent. Kyle tried calling. Clara sent a message pretending it was a mistake. I ignored them both. That same week, I received an invitation to the city's exclusive business summit. The keynote speaker slot had just opened. I accepted. When I arrived on stage, I wore a fitted black suit and a watch passed down from my mother. The audience was packed. I looked out and saw them both, Kyle and Clara, sitting near the back. Pale. Silent. My speech wasn't long. I talked about legacy. About perception versus reality. About how the world favors noise until silence walks in with receipts. And I ended with a smile. You don't have to raise your voice when you own the room. Applause filled the hall. But all I heard was the sound of Kyle's illusion shattering. He didn't know the girl he discarded had become the woman they now envied. And the best part? I didn't need to take anything from them. They gave it all away the moment they decided I wasn't enough. The wedding was still on, technically. But the cracks were too deep now to ignore. Clara tried to spin the situation. She posted a photo of her and Kyle in matching white outfits, captioned "Real love is tested in fire." Comments were turned off. I didn't have to say a word. The world was already doing the work for me. An exposé ran a week later, detailing the collapse of Kyle's startup, the shell companies Clara's father used to funnel investor money, and a series of private messages leaked by an anonymous source. The messages were between Kyle and Clara, mocking me. She looked so lost when I told her. I almost felt bad, but she didn't belong in our world. She's like a sweet stray dog. They thought I was fragile. They thought I'd disappear quietly. They never imagined I'd be the one holding the leash. After the story broke, Kyle's phone was disconnected. Clara's brand deals evaporated. Their wedding planner officially pulled out. Adrian sent me a single link. A resale site where Clara's $40,000 custom gown was being sold under a fake name. The listing read, "Never worn. Changed plans. Do you want it?" he joked. I'd rather buy the site and delete it. Give me 10 minutes. He was joking, probably. We sat on the terrace of his Manhattan penthouse, sipping coffee and listening to the city breathe beneath us. This time I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to hide. "You're not angry anymore," Adrian said. "No," I said. "I'm just done. You got everything you wanted." I nodded. And nothing I thought I needed. Kyle reached out again. A handwritten letter, delivered by courier. It was a mess of apologies and excuses. He said he didn't know who I really was. That he regretted everything. That he still thought of me. I burned the letter in a crystal ashtray and let the smoke curl into the sky. Clara went silent online. Her last post was a quote about reinvention. Funny how they both loved that word once. I hosted a private gala at the Carward estate, something my mother used to do every spring. This year, it returned under my name. Every major player in the city came. Cameras flashed. Investors mingled. Politicians smiled too wide. Adrian stood beside me, a quiet force of gravity. "They're here," he whispered. I turned and saw Kyle and Clara entering slowly, as guests, not names on the list, but plus ones to someone desperate for social leverage. Their eyes found me. Of course they did. Kyle looked like he hadn't slept in days. Clara's dress was perfect, but her smile was brittle. I didn't approach. I didn't wave. I simply turned back to my guests and carried on. Later, as the night waned, I stood on the balcony and felt the breeze press gently against my dress. Adrian joined me, handing me a glass. "To the long game," he said. "To knowing your worth," I replied. He brushed a hair from my face. "They'll never forget you." "I don't need them to," I said. I just need them to remember they were warned. Adrian leaned closer, voice low. What now? Now? I looked out over the skyline I had quietly bought piece by piece. Now I build. For real. With someone who doesn't need to be impressed. Who already knows what I'm worth. He took my hand, warm and steady. And just like that, I stepped away from the ashes of who they thought I was, and into the firelight of everything I'd become. They cancelled the wedding 2 days later. Officially, it was postponed indefinitely. But the whispers didn't stop. Kyle blamed media pressure. Clara blamed betrayal. Neither of them admitted the truth, that their downfall had nothing to do with chance, and everything to do with choice. Their choice to mock. To underestimate. To replace. The headlines shifted. From startup power couple to fallen from grace. Clara's influencer friends began unfollowing her in waves. A podcast she was supposed to guest on replaced her with a younger, more relevant face. Kyle's name disappeared from tech panels. Nobody wanted to be associated with failure. Especially not failure that reeked of entitlement. They tried to re-enter quietly. Clara hosted a charity brunch that barely sold seats. Kyle attempted a speaking engagement about resilience but was disinvited after sponsors pulled out. Meanwhile, I expanded. The Carward Foundation announced a new initiative to fund women-led startups, and the press couldn't get enough of it. My face, once invisible, now graced magazine covers and talk shows. I didn't need to speak badly of them. Success did it for me. Adrian and I remained steady. He never clung too tightly, never pushed when I needed space. But he stood at my side at every event, every negotiation, every silent war. There was something magnetic about him, not just charm, but depth. Like he'd lived in silence too, until he found someone worth speaking to. One night, as we walked through the newly opened Carward gallery, he paused in front of a photo of my mother. She would be proud, he said. She told me to be ordinary, I said quietly. To know what it means to live without privilege before I inherited it. And you did, he replied. You took the worst kind of heartbreak and turned it into architecture. Into legacy. I turned to him. Do you think I'm cruel? No, he said without hesitation. You're precise. And honest. There's a difference. Kyle showed up to my office that Friday. No appointment. No warning. He was thinner. Humbled. But the same eyes. The same voice. Lena, he said, like the name itself was a mistake. Can I talk to you? I stood behind the glass desk, arms crossed, posture unflinching. About what? Everything, he said. About us. About what happened. There is no us, Kyle. I didn't know who you really were. No, you didn't, I said. But the problem wasn't that you didn't know my name. It's that you didn't see my value until it had a price tag. I made a mistake. No. You made a choice. The mistake was thinking I'd always stay small. He looked away. Is there anything I can do to make it right? I walked around the desk, stopping just short of him. You already did, I said. You freed me. I didn't call security. I didn't humiliate him. I let him walk out quietly, just as I had months ago. Only now, the weight of the silence belonged to him. That night, I found Adrian on the rooftop terrace of our new headquarters. He held a glass in one hand and the city in the other. You saw him, he said. I did. And? I forgave him. But not for him. For me. Adrian looked at me, calm and proud. You're not who you were, Lena. No, I said. I'm more. He stepped closer. And what do you want now? With the empire. The name. The power. I looked into his eyes. I want peace. And love that doesn't come with conditions. And to never, ever be made to feel small again. He nodded once, then leaned in. And you have all of that? I do now. We stood together beneath the stars, no audience, no whispers. Just the quiet hum of victory and a future neither of us had to hide from. Months passed, but their names never returned to the spotlight. Kyle tried launching another company under a different name. Investors wouldn't touch it. His old partners had moved on, the bridge burned beyond repair. Clara pivoted to a low-effort lifestyle blog that barely gained traction. Her glossy smile looked more strained now, and every photo had a hint of desperation behind the curated perfection. They were still together. That much was clear. But it wasn't the power couple image they had once flaunted. It was survival, two people clinging to what was left of a ruined fantasy. Meanwhile, I built something real. The Carward Fellowship grew into a national initiative, funding women with ideas that deserved to be heard. I sat across from visionaries and dreamers, and every time I saw someone who had once been dismissed, I remembered how it felt to be told I wasn't enough. And I made sure they never had to feel it again. Adrian and I didn't define ourselves in public statements. We weren't a headline couple. But anyone who saw us together understood the quiet power we carried. We were partners, in business, in belief, and now, in something deeper. He never asked me to soften. He never asked me to stop. He only stood beside me, proud. At a conference one autumn evening, I gave a speech about resilience. About reinvention. About the quiet work no one applauds. Until it changes everything. Afterward, a young woman approached me, eyes wide with disbelief. Were you really, her? The girl Kyle King left? I smiled. No. I was always me. He just never bothered to look. She laughed nervously, then said, "You give people like me hope." That stayed with me longer than any article, any headline. Hope. Not revenge. Not pride. Hope. The season turned. We expanded internationally. Adrian and I opened a foundation in his mother's name. I bought a publishing house that once refused to print my mother's memoir and released it in hardcover with a gold-stamped title, The Woman Who Waited Until They Looked Up. It sold out in a day. I received a letter from Clara. Handwritten. She said she was sorry. Said she knew what they'd done. That it wasn't just cruel, it was stupid. She said I didn't deserve it. She was right. But I never responded. Because some stories aren't worth reopening. Kyle sent nothing. I imagined he understood there was nothing left to say. The woman he replaced had never truly existed, not the way he imagined. He created a version of me that was smaller, quieter, easier to discard. And when I rose beyond the box he tried to put me in, he didn't know what to do with the truth. That was fine. He didn't need to. I didn't rise for him. I rose for the version of myself I'd always believed in. The one who loved too deeply, forgave too quickly, and smiled through too much. She wasn't weak. She was just waiting. Now, she owned the room. The final stage of revenge is not a dramatic confrontation. It's peace. The kind of peace they can't touch. A year after they left me behind, I held the launch event for a new Carward campus, an innovation hub for underfunded founders, especially women who were once told their ideas were cute or unscalable. The press called it a legacy move. I called it a beginning. Adrian stood beside me as I cut the ribbon. Cameras flashed, but we didn't pose for them. We weren't there for applause. We were there because we had built something that would outlast both of us. After the event, he led me to the rooftop where a string quartet played softly and a private dinner waited for two. The skyline stretched around us, the city glowing like it belonged to us. He pulled out a small box, not flashy, not broadcasted. "I don't want this to be part of your empire," he said. "I want it to be part of your peace." Inside was a simple ring. Elegant. Timeless. No need to say yes. I already had. 2 days later, I saw Kyle again. By accident. I was leaving a bookstore when he stepped out from a side street, carrying a takeout bag and a worn expression. He looked older. Not in years, but in weight. He froze. So did I. For a breath, we said nothing. Then he tried a smile. "Lena." I nodded. "Kyle. I heard about everything. The fellowship. The new center. Busy year." He laughed once. "You always did dream big." "No," I said. "I just stopped letting people convince me to dream small." His smile faltered. "I was wrong. About a lot of things." "I know." A pause. "I thought Clara would. I don't know. Be everything." "And she wasn't?" He looked down. "She was everything she said she was. I just didn't know what that meant until I saw what you became." "I didn't become this because of you," I said. "I became this despite you." He nodded slowly. "That's what hurts the most." We parted without drama. No final dig. No apology I didn't need. Just silence. And I walked away from it lighter. Because it was over. I didn't need his guilt. Or her jealousy. Or their downfall. I had built something better. A life. A future. A love that didn't ask me to shrink. Adrian and I married in a quiet ceremony. No press. No diamonds the size of fists. Just us, under a canopy of trees, surrounded by people who had never once asked me to be anyone other than myself. The last photo taken that day showed me laughing, eyes closed, head tilted back. And when the world saw it in the Foundation's year-end letter, they didn't see the girl who had once been left behind. They saw the woman who rewrote the ending. Who didn't just survive betrayal, she transcended it. And in doing so, she became the one thing they never expected. Untouchable.